Okay, so today we have the former spokesman for Obama and the National Security Council and currently host Pod Save America and Pod Save the World, Tommy Vietor. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So I did have Lovett on a few weeks ago, so lucky for you, we've exhausted the whole daylight savings time argument, so we can skip over that today.
Good, thank God. I've heard it for 4 years.
So let's jump in. We're looking at a Biden win by over 5 million votes, likely 306 electoral votes, and yet because we live in hell, this transition time is spent oscillating between temporary bouts of joy and paralyzing fear over what Trump's going to do. So I want to go over some things because the number one question I'm getting now is, should we be worried? So in the last few days, there have been major shakeups with Pentagon leadership. Admittedly, this isn't my world. It's not a lot of our world. But when we see our entire civilian leadership get purged in one fell swoop, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence. So
No.
Elephant in the room, and I don't know how to say this without sounding alarmist, but is there a world in which this is setting the stage for some type of election theft or coup, as far as you can tell?
So here's how I'm thinking about it. I think that Donald Trump's well of bad faith is bottomless. So there is no doubt in my mind that if he could find a way to illegally keep power despite losing the election, he would. It's just, I don't know that there's any path forward for him to actually do so. Like all the worst case scenarios that people have been talking about and writing about for months about, getting electors in various states to get replaced and, swap them in with his supporters so that they'll actually give him the electoral votes. Like, the deeper you dig into all those scenarios, the harder and harder it is to actually pull off, let alone pull off in all these states, or to strike enough votes so that he would actually win. So, it sucks. It's unnerving. We should never have gotten here, but I think people should feel good that Joe Biden will take the presidency. Now, in terms of these goons over at the Pentagon, I mean, yeah, it's very weird to decapitate your Pentagon leadership and install a bunch of people who worked for Devin Nunes and who are known for, doing weird things with intelligence products. It's very strange and no one knows exactly what's going on. The theory that makes the most sense to me is one that suggests they're going to look at all the intel they can find at the NSA or at the Department of Defense and try to declassify and push out anything that helps Trump's narrative that the Russia investigation was a hoax. It's just it's that petty.
Basically, what that would mean is that he's spending this time, trying to disprove the Mueller probe, which would mean he's basically trying to relitigate 2016, despite having lost in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show the extent to which, he's driven by his own ego, that this is what he's doing in his final days of his presidency.
Yeah. And it's not like there's anything else going on, right? It's not like 140,000 people got COVID yesterday. I mean, there's a lot of things he should be focused on. There's a lot of reasons delaying the transition is dangerous. There's national security ones, but then it's just the fact that it's great. Everyone was elated when we heard this news that Pfizer's vaccine is working. I want the Trump and Biden transition teams working hand in glove to make sure that we all can get that thing distributed as fast as possible, and yet we're just pulling this nonsense.
Another theory that's come up kind of revolves around this idea of troop withdrawal in Afghanistan, that he's installing these people so that he'll be able to pull troops out. But am I so cynical that I can't imagine that Trump is actually just legacy building during this lame duck session? Everything he does is transactional. So how does this help him?
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, he had 4 years to get all our troops out of Afghanistan. In reality, despite claiming he was ending these wars, he sent more over there a couple times. Yeah. And, the security situation is not good. I'm very much in favor of getting all U.S. troops out of Afghanistan. It's just that if you have some precipitous withdrawal over the course of a month of 4,000 or 5,000 guys, what is that going to do to the people who are counting on them for security? It just feels like a horribly cruel, dangerous thing to do to a country that suffered 2 decades of war. That said, long term, I want to see them come home as well.
So moving over to the race, Trump's obviously refused to concede the race, which should surprise exactly no one. But more broadly, by refusing to allow Biden to start his transition, what impacts does this have, both regarding national security and otherwise, on the American people?
So On the national security side, like there's some simple things like Biden hasn't gotten access to the presidential daily briefing, the PDB, which would just give him a lay of the land about sort of the threats the country faces and then help him prepare for those. So it's a big deal.
Be the first person to read the PDB in about 4 years. So
that was my response too. It's like, hey man, at least somebody's going to read it. I mean,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right. And then the other piece of this though is, like in the intelligence side of the house, everything is classified. Like the CIA budget, the intelligence budgets are all classified. There's all these covert action programs that you have to get briefed up on, and you have to decide like if you're going to keep this thing going or not. And so by refusing to give Biden's team access to classified information or facilities, they can't begin that process. They can't start planning. They can't go over to the CIA or the DNI's office and have meetings and get briefed out by those folks. And that's just going to slow everything down. Like a normal transition team, you end up sending over 2, 3, 4 people. You call them basically landing teams who just park in these agencies, whether it's the State Department or DOD or the Intel side. And they work out of there for several months and kind of like help you get briefed up as an incoming transition and plan what you're going to do. And he's just robbing Biden of all that time.
Yeah. And does that kind of expose us to any risk in the meantime? Like I know that there were some reports that Bush hadn't been able to install his transition teams prior to, in time, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the 9/11 Commission report, they noted that Bush didn't really have his full national security team up and running for 6 months, which delayed everything they wanted to do. And some people pointed to the recount as being one of the reasons why. I think in the wake of that, there were some reforms that mandated certain deadlines for transition planning and preparation that started like in May and then September of this past year. And so some of the work has been done, but like, the clock is ticking. You got to hire like thousands and thousands of people the next few months, and he's sucking away that time.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, if anybody is prepared, I think it's Joe Biden, who obviously came from the last administration
for sure
as vice president, and then his new chief of staff, Ron Klain. So I think we're in good hands, especially given the obstacles that have been erected.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, like they'll figure it out. They'll catch up. It's just it really is irresponsible and shitty.
I'm sorry to drag you into this debate, but I do want to ask what your take is on the whole, what went wrong in the House races, on the rhetoric that was used, the whole AOC versus Connor Lamb. So pick a side, Tommy, and alienate half the party.
Yeah, right. Let's fight it out. I mean, here's my take on it. I get the frustration on both sides. That said, like, okay, let's say for a second that AOC didn't support defund the police, right? And Connor Lamb won that argument. There's still going to be a bunch of activists who want to defund the police. There's still going to be a bunch of activists who want to abolish ICE. And the Trump campaign was like plucking out random tweets from people and putting them in TV ads, right? People that were in no way associated with the Biden campaign.
Right.
People are just going to do that in the next campaign about whatever the controversial issue is. So I think the debate has to not be about telling someone what to believe or what they can talk about. I don't think AOC can tell Connor Lamb how to run in his district. I don't think Connor Lamb can tell AOC what to believe in or support. It's about winning and finding a way to fight the disinformation and the lies that we all know are going to come, And so I think any after action report on this campaign is going to take some time. We need to see the exit polls once they're reweighted and they're fixed and they're compared to the actual voter data, and any, sort of snap determinations about what happened are probably just going to be wrong in 6 months when we see the final, actual precinct level data for about who voted what way. But, it just feels like a little too much jockeying for me right now to sort of prove that, I've been right all along,
Yeah, I mean, but to your point though, Pete Buttigieg said it best, I think, during the primary season is he basically said they're going to call us socialists regardless of what we do. So we might as well do what's right. And,
Yep.
this is the same instance where we can basically allow the right to dictate the terms of the conversation and to say like, okay, well, we won't say this, we won't say this, we won't say this, we won't say this, because we're ultimately going to get vilified on Fox News. But regardless of what we say, even if it means they can pluck out one tweet from one random Twitter account that has 6 followers, then that's going to be, a half-hour segment on Hannity. So at the end of the day, we just have to kind of do what's right. And
I think we have to do what's right. But I also think we can frame things in smart ways and less smart ways, right? Like, I agree with a lot of the policies put forward by the Democratic Socialists, the DSA crew. What I would tell them, though, is why take a bunch of very popular sort of like FDR New Deal policies and then give them a label, socialism, that we know is going to turn off a bunch of people? Why not just describe what we're going to do for people and how we're going to help them in their lives, and not label ourselves socialist or progressive or conservative or moderate, right? And that's sort of like some of the branding advice I might give some of these guys.
Yeah. Something we've seen is like, Republicans have terrible policies, but they have a messaging apparatus that's second to none, because they obviously have, Fox News, which is accountable to nothing and no one, all the way down to, their internet personalities and their politicians, and the whole thing is just kind of, it's easier to message when you don't have to worry about the burden of telling the truth,
Yeah. You have Fox News and you can just kind of run wild and say whatever you want.
Also, most importantly for these races that are coming up, my inclination in the Georgia runoff is just to kind of let Stacey Abrams and the Georgia folks steer the ship. So I think that's a good segue into these runoffs. So we obviously have these 2 runoffs coming up in Georgia without the Senate. Just to kind of to highlight what's at stake here. Without the Senate, I know what's off the table, and that would be voting rights legislation, climate change legislation, $15 minimum wage, codifying Roe, expanding the court. What would be on the table?
So if we don't get the Senate, what will be on the table is, there will have to be a budget passed once a year, and you can see what you can attach to that somehow, or work with Pelosi and her team to sort of get things through, attached to sort of must pass funding legislation. But a lot of it will be executive actions. So that can come in the form of executive orders. Some of them are simple. You can say you can reverse the Muslim ban on day one, right? Like you can permanently end family separation. But then, Joe Biden will be able to use the purchasing power of the executive branch to really incentivize, let's say, the purchase and use of electric vehicles to try to sort of help with climate change. There's a lot of things you can do that way in terms of your budgeting and executive actions that will be powerful and important. But man, if we can get those 2 Senate seats, it will be a game changer.
Yeah. So let's talk about those Senate seats. So
sure.
Tell us about Vote Save America's Adopt a State program for Georgia.
Yeah. So listen, like the Senate's 50-48 right now in terms of Republicans heading into these runoffs. If we win both those seats, Vice President Kamala Harris will be able to serve as a tie-breaking vote in her role as president of the Senate. And so they're super tight. Senator David Perdue, Senator Kelly Loeffler, they are currently running a bit ahead of Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, their challengers. But like these runoff elections are often about how motivated your base is. And so what we're trying to do is help folks who don't live in Georgia go to votesaveamerica.com/Georgia. You can sign up and we will email you ways to help out organizers on the ground. Like we just flipped this state for Biden and Harris, and we think that we can help finish it out.
That's a good point. I mean, if we ever needed any indication that we can win in Georgia, just look at the fact that we just won in Georgia. I mean, this presidential election is a testament to the fact that Georgia can absolutely be a blue state.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can organize it for this runoff, and then we can organize it again for the long term and just build on the work that Stacey Abrams and all these great groups have been doing. And so, like a piece of this will be like, if you have $10 that you can spare, I know it's been a long election. We've been asking people to give money everywhere. If you go to our Vote Save America page, we can votesaveamerica.com/getmitch. That will allow you to donate $10 and it'll automatically split to the Warnock and Ossoff campaigns. But then on top of that, we're going to help folks find volunteer opportunities, both directly with the campaigns, but then also outside groups that are doing work on the ground that are just have been incredibly impactful.
So again, if you're looking to donate, votesaveamerica.com/getmitch. And also if you're looking to adopt a state in Georgia, votesaveamerica.com/Georgia.
Exactly.
Tommy, can you tell us a little bit about what Vote Save America was able to accomplish the last time around?
Yeah, so look, I'm incredibly proud of the work we did, of the community, of our team. We created this program where you could adopt one of 6 swing states and get trained to be a digital organizer. And so if you lived in California, you could adopt Arizona, and you could make calls, you could text bank, you could do all sorts of things to help them win. And look, when we designed it, we thought it would be really cool to have like 10,000, 20,000 people sign up. We ended up having 300,000, just like overwhelming.
Yes.
And those amazing people, I literally just got off a Zoom with about a dozen of them. They made like 7 or 8 million calls. They sent 6 or 7 million texts. Wow. I mean, like that people, hundreds of thousands of people used our tool to either get registered or find out if they're registered. The community raised $42 million for Senate candidates and other political causes. So it was really impactful stuff. It was just, it was a reminder to me of the power of community and activism and people sort of coming together and realizing that, like there's more of us than there are of them. And if we do the work together, if we approach it with joy, if we see hope and opportunity in out there and not like, be fearful of what Donald Trump can do, we can win. And so it was really affirming. It was really exciting. It was just a lot of fun to be a part of. So if folks are looking for some way to chip in, if they want to meet people, if they want to, feel like you're a part of something bigger, I highly, highly recommend it.
That's really well said. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for giving us the time, and good luck in everything you're doing for these Georgia races, and we'll be with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all your listeners for caring about this stuff.